Good morning, everybody. This is Kevin Dorn with the Maine Forest Service. Hopefully everybody can hear me at this point. If you wouldn't mind just entering into the chat box a yes or a no when it comes to can you hear me? I see a couple of people. Yes, that's good. Thank you, Erica. Hi, Bill. Mark, nice. Frantic activity going on right now, typing into the chat box. Good. Thank you, everybody. Well, welcome to our How to Be an Effective Blogger webinar. This is webinar number 1 out of hopefully many. My name is Kevin Dorn. I'm the natural science educator with the Maine Forest Service, and I am here with Spencer Meyer and Aaron Quigley. Also, Greg Lord, who I want to give credit to Greg for taking care of a lot of the technical issues for today. So I'm going to start things off. We're going to be talking, myself and Spencer, for probably 5-8 minutes at most, and then we're going to turn it over to our featured speaker, Aaron Quigley. So everybody, everybody indicated that they can hear, so we don't need to go through the nuts and the bolts about hearing or not hearing. Please, for any questions that you have, use the chat box, and everybody has done that already. You don't have problems accessing the site, but in the future, if you do or you're doing one of these yourself, you can use that same link. We're finding out that a lot of people use that link. It's through Penn State, but it gets you to where you need to go. So my part, I'm going to give a very brief introduction to the Forest for Maine Futures group, who we are, a little history, then I'm going to turn it over to Spencer. Spencer's going to talk about some recent initiatives to the group. So to get us going, we are, the Forest for Maine Futures group is a partnership of the organizations you can see at the bottom of the screen. We have Small Woodland Owners Association of Maine, Maine Tree Foundation, the Maine Forest Service, which is part of the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, and we have the University of Maine Center for Research on Sustainable Forest. And simply put, the group's mission is to promote sustainable forestry and educate individuals about the benefits and wonders of Maine forests. And you can read into that. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we generally have done to this point, but that's what our guiding mission is. Just some history. For those that have been connected, which I think most everybody, to the forest industry, forest-related industry, we have, back in 1999, 2000, there was a whole bunch of research that was research studies that occurred, and most of them showed a consistent theme that when the public or landowners are looking for information, they go to one of these 4 organizations. And if you're interested in the actual research, I can give you the citations. Just send me an email after this webinar. What the consistent theme was that these 4 organizations were credible and trusted. So that's where people went to. Back in 2003, 2004, Bruce Wiersma at the university and Sherry Huber started talking about how do we get these 4 organizations working together to reach landowners and the public about forestry and forest resources. Let me go back. In 2005, a media committee, we didn't even have a name at that point, a media committee was formed, and the mission was to get out good, credible information on a wide variety of issues. And it could be the economic benefits of the forest industry, it could be the ecological values, wildlife habitat values, recreation, also an opportunity to discuss threats and some opportunities. Threats could be the emerald ash borer and just the overall values that the forest offers. We wanted to also present a face or faces of the forest. You know, people work out in the forest, people make a living in the forest, and people enjoy the forest in many ways. Currently, we employ on a contract basis Joe Rankin. Many of you may know Joe. He was a reporter and a editor in local papers for many years. He retired from the newspaper world, and when we contracted with him, he said he was never going to write again, but he believed so deeply in our effort that he was going to write for us. So he writes one monthly feature article for the Forest for Maine Futures group. We also put out a bi-weekly, we call it News Roundup. It's distributed to our listserv, which is approximately 4,500 people. And Spencer's going to talk about some of the recent additions and initiatives to the group. But recently, we started utilizing social media, including a blog. If you haven't been to our website, this is a screenshot from our website. Take a look at it. We have home, we have about the group, we have feature articles on here, we have archived information. You can sign up for the newsletter, you can participate in the blog, and if you look to the bottom right corner, you can see that you can follow us on Twitter, you can see us on Facebook, and who knows what is next. At this point, I'm going to turn the mic over to Spencer Meyer. Spencer.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. Glad to see a lot of familiar names in the list of participants. I'm just going to follow up on a couple of points. For several years, we've been sending these feature articles out to a email listserv, about 4,500 folks. Many of you, or hopefully all of you, are on that list, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback. People have really been enjoying these feature-length articles. And we polled the group. We did a survey this past year, and people on that group are really pretty happy with the way things are. And we asked a lot of questions about how interested they are in expanding to social media. And the results actually weren't that promising. The folks that are on that list kind of like it, getting these feature-length articles, and were less likely to engage in social media than we might have hoped. However, part of the reason we did the survey is that we thought that the 4,500 people on that list might be a lot like us. That is to say, they already know the good word about the forest. They already know all the benefits and a lot of the benefits of the forest. And part of our mission is to expand and reach beyond our existing audience. And so what we decided to do is keep this program going, keep sending articles out to this group, but try to engage new audiences, broader audiences by using social media. So we brought on Aaron Quigley in a contract capacity to work with us and develop our social media plan. We're a few months into implementing that plan, and we have a Facebook presence, as you can see there on the left, and Kevin mentioned, and also a Twitter presence. Aaron's very active on both on behalf of Forest for Maine's Future, and we see that as a sort of core way to grow our readership, and we're keeping track of that. We also had in November a workshop, a roundtable, to discuss some issues about social media and how to maybe build a partnership of groups in the state that are doing have similar missions, or at least a part of their mission is getting the word out about the values of the forest. Sort of rising tides lift all boats approach. And so one of the recommendations from that workshop was to put together a network where we could communicate about these issues. And we built the Maine Woods Outreach Network page on LinkedIn. I don't know how many of you are engaged in LinkedIn, but a lot of people out there are, and we thought this could be a forum for discussing these kinds of issues. People in that roundtable discussed ideas. For instance, if you want to bat around some ideas before you do a press release or before you engage in a social media campaign, you can ask your colleagues through the Maine Woods Outreach Network to look things over for you, proofread, or develop strategies together. Also a way to sort of share each other's information and point each other to other social media outlets for your information. So we have a bunch of people signed up on that Maine Maine Woods Outreach Network page. I'm the only one that's posted anything so far. I'm baiting all of you and waiting for you to participate and make some comments. So it's one of those things where the more that you contribute, the bigger the community gets. And we're hopeful that this will serve as a place to share some ideas and work on some things together. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Erin Quigley. As I said, she's been developing and implementing our social media strategy, and a big part of that is to work with our fellow organizations around the state on how to get the word out on your story and our story and everyone's story about the Maine Woods. So she's going to talk to us for the rest of the hour about blog. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Spencer. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. And so thanks to all of you for coming today. And I'm going to, as Spencer mentioned, talk for the rest of the time about some basic points about how to be an effective blogger and how to create a blog that effectively draws attention to your organization. And as I'm talking, we'll have a little bit of a Q&A session at the end if we have time for it, which I think we will. But also, if you have any questions while I'm talking, feel free to type them into the chat box down in the lower right part of your screen, and I might address some of them as I go. And Spencer and Kevin are here helping me notice when things get typed into the box. So feel free to ask questions there throughout the presentation. So without further ado, today I'm going to talk, I'm going to break it down into a couple different sections. The first section obviously will be why you should consider having a blog at all. Second, I'll talk about what kind of platform you might want to use. Third, how to create good content for your blog, which is the most important part. And fourth, helping people find your blog on the internet, which is probably just as important. And then I'll show you an example from the Forest for Maine's Future blog that we've been working on for the past couple months and is just kind of starting to gain some traction. So the first most important thing obviously is why should you have a blog? A blog, most importantly, can draw people to your website consistently over time by providing new content. Your website, you probably don't have that many occasions to update it. Maybe you put up some new news every once in a while, that sort of thing. But a blog is consistent new content that will constantly direct new people to your site. You want to have more opportunities to engage with your target audience, to provide them useful information, real content that they might need, that they might come back to your site for over time. And just having a blog can improve your position in web search results also. Because there's constant new content being put out there in the world. And actually, so some of you attended, I believe, we had that workshop in November about social media for the Maine Woods. Rich Brooks from Flight New Media was there. He gave a presentation about different kinds of social media that organizations might consider using. And since he's our social media guru, I have a few quotes from him scattered throughout my presentation here. And one of them that I found is, Rich Brooks says, every time you create a new post for your blog, you create a new web page, and every web page is another opportunity to rank well for specific search terms on search engines. So basically, each new page of content that you put out there is another chance for people to find you when they search the web. So that's a pretty good reason to have a blog, to drive people to your content. And another point I could make here is that blogging is just more permanent than a lot of other forms of social media, like Facebook, Twitter, even email. You know, Facebook post, people read it for maybe the first couple hours. After you post it, then it's gone. Same with a Twitter post. Email, people can delete their email, that sort of thing, but a blog is always out there on the internet in perpetuity. So people could be searching for a particular topic next year, and they might still find your blog, which you can't say for other forms of social media. So it's worth considering. So as far as what platform to use, there's lots of different choices out there. There's WordPress, Squarespace, Tumblr. You see more of the logos here of different companies on this slide. And which one you choose to use is really up to you and the people you work with on your web presence. They're all pretty similar in terms of features. Some are more, I'm most familiar with WordPress and Squarespace. Squarespace is more visually oriented. If you want to have lots of images, that's a good way to go. WordPress is more widely used, but really they're all just a little bit different. So that's why in this presentation today, I'm not going to talk too much about technical things because it's going to vary across the board. But at some point you will have to choose which format you'd like. Tumblr is a really popular one right now because it integrates well with other forms of social media, so that might be something to consider as well. And so now we'll talk a little bit about what kind of content you should put in your blog, because really when it comes down to it, your blog is not just some kind of web advertisement. The reason it's there is to provide content, so you have to spend some time making content that's valuable. And you can spend tons of time on search terms and tags and reeling in readers and stuff, but if it's not something that people want to read, they're not going to spend a lot of time on it. So one of the best ways to think about it is that you want to choose topics for blog posts that solve problems for your ideal audience. Someone has a problem, they go to the internet to try to find an answer to their problem, your blog is there as providing an obvious answer. That's a great way to drive traffic to your blog. And you also want to think a little bit about your title. You don't just want to call it something creative and fun that doesn't have anything to do with the topic of the blog. You want to specifically design your title so that it helps drive traffic to what you've written. And so you want your title to be engaging, and you want it to be full of keyword phrases, which are phrases that people might use when they're doing an internet search to find content that's similar to yours. And I'll talk more about keyword phrases throughout my entire presentation. So, blog titles. You've probably seen a bunch of these lately. There's some styles that are trendy in blog titles right now. I looked some up on the Huffington Post recently, the top blog posts on the Huffington Post, and they were things like, the one hidden iPhone feature that's freaking out the competition, 10 things you eat all the time that are poisoning you, and why you're not married, things like this that are very sort of sensational almost, and they really draw attention to your blog. They're really engaging. And the themes that you might have noticed in those titles are lists. They show that the blog post is going to be a list of something. Questions, just straight up questions that are going to be answered. How-tos, how to do this, how to do that. And the shocking lead-ins, that's the freaking out the competition, that sort of thing. And when you're making your own blog post for your organization, I feel like you could go either way with this, that you could choose to use those styles because they're obviously working for driving traffic to different blog posts on the internet, or you could choose to not use those styles explicitly because you want your blog to appear different, a little more substantive maybe than some of these kinds of posts. So it's up to you to some extent, but they're good trends to know about in blog titling. So when you get down to the body of your blog, the actual content itself, you want to think again about keyword phrases, those phrases that people are searching for on the internet when they're interested in content like yours. You want to open right away in the first sentence with a keyword phrase, just like you had in your title. That's important because those first couple sentences are what people will use to decide if they want to finish reading your blog post or not. And that's where search engines look as well. Title, first sentences. You also want to explain the benefit of the blog post right away to your reader in that first paragraph. Why should they care? What are they going to get out of it? What do they not know yet that they will know when they're done reading your post? So it's important to explain the benefit right away. It's also important to keep the blog post as a whole pretty short and focused on that point. You don't want it to be a rambling, it's not a feature-length article like some of the other content that Forest Remains Future, for instance, produces. A lot of times I'll take content that Joe has written that is feature-length, really descriptive, really quality text, and I'll cut it down into some of the essences of what he was writing about, and use that to create a blog post. Short, focused, using lots of subheadings, lots of bulleted lists, anything that breaks up big blocks of text. That's really difficult on the internet where people have these short attention spans. You want the text to look non-intimidating. That's one of the reasons that lists are so important. People can move through them really quickly. You also want to make sure at the end of your post, similarly, that you highlight instant takeaways and conclusions, what people have gotten out of the post. You want to reinforce that, oh, I'm glad I took the 5 minutes of my day to read this post. I'm really interested in what might be coming up next. Instant takeaways, conclusions right away. If you're comfortable with it, you can choose to have comments enabled at the bottom of each blog post, which will allow people to leave their own comments about your content, obviously. And if you're comfortable with that, you should definitely actively encourage, in the text of the blog, you should actively encourage comments. Invite people to share their own opinions if you want. There might be situations where, as an organization, you don't want people to be able to comment about certain topics or things, and that's fine as well. But interaction is really the name of the game when it comes to social media. Of course, it might go without saying to point out that you want to edit. The internet is full of bad grammar and bad editing, but it doesn't look very good for your blog to be one of the contributors to the problem. So it's always good to make sure that you've edited appropriately before you make your blog post public. And you want to produce your content consistently. So you want people to know that they can count on you for new information over time into the future. So they can look forward to new things. If they come back to your site next week or in 2 weeks or a month, they're going to find new stuff that they haven't seen before. And like I said earlier, with a regular website, they're not going to expect a lot of new content. They're not going to have a lot of reasons to revisit your site. But if they know there's a blog where there's new stuff and it happens regularly, then they're more likely to come back over and over again. A lot of social media companies and advisors will tell you you should blog like 2 to 3 times a week, something like that. I think for any organization that actually is also trying to get work done, that's a lot. That's a lot of blogging. And it takes time to come up with valuable content. Like, it's a real time commitment. And that can be a trade-off for an organization with limited staff and limited resources. So, like, for instance, Forest for Maine's Future has hired me to work on blogging and other social media specifically, and I aim for about 1 blog post a week. And, that might vary for your organization depending on who's doing the blogging and what their other responsibilities are and that kind of thing. But being consistent is very important. And so I just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions or you want me to clarify anything, feel free to say so down there in the chat box. But next I'm going to talk a little bit about helping people find your blog. Once you have some content out there, you want people to look at it. What are the best ways to get more folks interested in what you're saying? So we're going to get back to those keyword phrases that I was talking about earlier. You want to use those phrases that your target audience is searching for on the internet. And how do you figure out what those are? Well, a lot of it is just using the resources you have already. Like, I often try to find what common keyword phrases are by just using my Google search window. It auto-completes searches for you. And so when you start typing in a word, it'll autocomplete a whole bunch of different variants on phrases that other people have searched for in the past. And so that's a really good way to figure out what common search terms are. A tip about that, though, is to make sure you log out of your personal Gmail account, if you have one, or your personal Google account, because Google does a really great job these days of customizing your search content based on your previous interests, and that can actually screw up a little bit what keyword phrases it shows you. Like, maybe you're the kind of person, like some of us are, that search for Maine woods things a lot in your search term, and that can kind of bias what the results are. So you want to make sure that you're not getting that bias when you're looking for search terms. Because if the point of your blog is to draw in people that aren't already aware of your site, for instance, you're going to not want to do that sort of version of preaching to the choir, as it were. So Google also has some other tools to help you with this. They have a keyword planner if you pay to use Google AdWords. And you often, for these things, there are some non-affiliated ones on the internet as well. At best, you still have to give them your email address, contact information. At worst, you have to pay for it to get these lists of common search terms. And it may or may not be worth it, depending on what you're trying to do. It's just good to know that they're out there. And once you know these keyword phrases, you can use them in the title, in the body of the text, and in tags, which is something I'll talk about just a little bit later. Another way to think about keyword phrases is to think about questions, that idea of answering questions that your target audience is asking. So there are websites out there that specifically help you find keywords that are in question format. Like when you type into the internet, how do I do blah, blah, blah thing? That's what these keyword question tools will come up with. Like there's one that's www.keywordquestionstool.com. And I haven't really used these as much, but it's a similar concept where it helps you learn what people are searching for on the web. And so when you're picking keyword phrases and questions, you do want to pick ones that are really popular to focus on, but you also want to kind of make sure the market isn't flooded for those words. It's a similar concept to like if you had a restaurant and you named it Eat. And then when people were trying to find the hours of your restaurant on the internet, it's almost impossible for them to search for it because of all the other things that would come up when you use the word eat on the internet. And so that's what you want to avoid. You want the keywords to be popular, but you also want them to be specific enough that your content isn't going to get lost in like the sea of other content on the internet. And of course, it's important to remind you here at this point that you should never focus on keywords and phrases over content. Content is still the most important thing, because even if people get driven to your site, if there's not useful content when they get there, they're gone in 2 seconds. Internet attention span is very short. And how people find your content online is changing as fast as technology in general is changing, which means all the time, constantly, faster than you can keep up with. So having good content that's relevant can make your blog continue to be useful even as the methods people use to find blogs might change. You know, maybe keyword phrases in a couple years won't be nearly as important, but people are still going to be looking for the content that you provide in some way. So another important thing to think about when you're crafting the content of your blog that can help drive people to the blog is that you want to link to other websites and blogs as much as you possibly can. When search engines are ranking pages in their search results, if a page has lots of incoming and outgoing links to other pages, and other pages have linked to that page, then it's likely to be higher in search results. So lots of links to other pages, be shameless. Anytime you mention another organization, anything that has its own website, make that phrase a link to that actual website, and that'll help your blog show up a lot more. And in that same vein, link to your own website as much as possible as well. Link to old blog posts that you've made that are relevant, that people might want to look at after they've looked at your blog. Like, make it really, really easy to find your website and to find other content by you from your blog, because people aren't going to look that hard for it, but if it's right there, then they will click through to it and they'll experience more of what you have to offer right away. Other ways to share the content of your blog once it's written is you can make sure that your blog has share buttons that appear with each post for Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Google+, whatever your social media of choice is. You can make it easy for folks to share your content on their social media by having these share buttons, the Facebook, the Twitter, and I'll show you the example later from the Forest Remains Future blog that has these buttons available. So if someone likes the article, they just click on share and then it's posted to their own Facebook page. It might help other people find that same content. And you yourself can also do this once you post a new blog post. You can go to your organization's own Facebook page, Twitter page, LinkedIn page, etc., and you can post a link to the blog. Let everyone know that you have a new blog post available. They should go check it out, that sort of thing. It's very important. It's a good way to think about it is just sort of to feel proud of what you've written. You've written something, you want to share it with as many people as possible. How do I do that? Oh, I'll go put the link on my Facebook page. You want people to see the good stuff that you've done. And also, don't be afraid to like things yourself. You post something on Facebook, you really want people to see it. You can go log into Facebook in your own personal account and like it. There's no shame in doing stuff like that. Anything that makes it look like more people are engaging with your content is really key. And in that same vein, post about your new blog post on Facebook and Twitter more than once. I talked earlier about the short half-life of a Facebook post. Not everyone in your list of likes is going to see it the first time you post it. And it's not as obnoxious as you think it might be to post it maybe once a day for a couple days, something like that, because the same people aren't always going to see it. You're just going to make sure you get a little bit of a broader reach by posting multiple times. Some other ways to help people engage with your content a little bit more and a little bit more consistently is to respond to other people's comments. You've encouraged other people to comment in the text of your blog, and you want to respond to people when they actually make the time and effort to make a comment on your blog. So you want to let people know that you appreciate them. This is kind of a standard theme of social media all around, that when people interact with your content on your Twitter page, on your Twitter feed, on your Facebook page, you want to engage with them, make them know that someone's listening on the other end, which is pretty important. And sometimes people, you can do all kinds of interesting things this way. Like maybe people have a misconception about something that you wrote and you can clarify. There's all kinds of useful ways to use comments. Rich Brooks, the social media guru, says, a good blog is like a cocktail party, and a gracious host greets his guests and makes sure they're having a good time. So it's kind of a cool way to think about it, that you want to encourage people to keep interacting by interacting with them. So, and it doesn't just stop at your own blog. It's important to think about commenting and interacting on blogs of other people that you'd also like to support. So be thoughtful, contribute to conversations that other people have started on other blogs and in other forums. And that kind of cross-pollination can drive new traffic back to your blog from people who are curious about you and your views. But it can also encourage collaborations between maybe you and another organization that also has a really active blog. It gets people talking to each other about possible collaborations in the future. And so I guess the last point I'll make about helping people find your blog is that it can take a long time. And if people don't look at your content right away, you can't give up and say it's not working and just walk off. It can take a really long time to get noticed as a producer of consistent content. And so many of the resources I found while I was doing some research for this post say that it takes about 6 months of consistent activity before, on average, you'll see real increases in the visibility of your blog. And that's a long time to just throw content out there into the ether and not get a lot of response, and it can be really discouraging. But it's important to stick with it, and it works out well in the end, because by the time people do take notice of you, then you have a lot of quality content out there already in the bank, as it were, and it makes you look a lot better when people find you. It makes you look like you've been doing this for a long time and you know what you're talking about. So that kind of thing is really important. Images and video. Like I was saying earlier, you want to break up big blocks of text in your blog as much as you possibly can. And one way to do that is to use lots of photos, lots of eye-catching visuals. And especially in this era of Instagram and Pinterest, where images from your posts can be taken from your page, pinned to other pages, shared freely on social media. The more images you have, the more links back to your content that provides. And the capabilities of platforms like Pinterest, where You can take other people's photos, pin them to your own Pinterest boards, have led to a trend that I'll kind of show you a little bit later, where people are putting text actually, rather than just having captions about their photos, they're putting text on the photos themselves, so that whatever happens to that photo, wherever it gets moved around the internet, there's always that link back to the original content provider, so people can find them. And I say here on the PowerPoint, prepping your photos for Pinterest, that's kind of what I'm talking about. And like, we don't do that with every photo that goes on our blog, for instance, but if you have a photo that you suspect is going to get a lot of sharing and a lot of interest, that can be something to consider. When you're putting images into your blog post, the way that works technically, again, is different for each platform, depending on which platform you choose to use. But you want to name your images using keywords, because that's information that search engines can detect. And you want to tag your images with keywords if you can. Some platforms will have a place where you can put in keyword tags that are relevant to the image for each image as you upload it to your blog. And you want to take advantage of that if that's available. And video is really important because the internet loves video. People on the internet love video and search engines love video. So just having video, maybe say an embedded YouTube video on your page, can increase your rank in search results. And it will also encourage people to stay on your page. People are more likely to view video on social media, for instance, than they are to just look at a photograph even. So video can be very important if you have access to it. And a little bit about guest blogging. One of the things that we want to encourage through the Maine'sFuture outreach network is that various organizations that have their own blogs might be able to utilize guest bloggers from other organizations to cross-pollinate, collaborate, have different kinds of content, and add variety to all the individual blogs. And guest blogging can be really great that way. It adds variety in style and in content. It takes the pressure off of you to always come up with content all the time. Like I was saying earlier, it is work and it takes time, and sometimes it's nice to not have to do it yourself. And it really does drive collaboration to have you helping out another organization, they're helping you out. It's all, it provokes conversation, basically, about the content. And when you think about doing a guest blog, obviously you want to use experts or people well-known or relevant to your target audience, because those people will drive traffic to your blog. People might be looking for content by those individuals, and then they'll come back to you. And make sure that your guest blog posts aren't just gratuitous, obviously. You still have to focus on topics that solve problems for people, provide information they need to know. Just having someone with putting a name on a post is not good enough. So I thought it might be useful at the end here to just go through a typical Forest for Maine's Future blog post, check it out, and you can see how I incorporated some of those principles into the blog post itself. So here we have the Forest for Maine's Future blog page. You've already seen this earlier in the presentation. And we have a few key aspects here that I want to point out. You'll notice there are keyword phrases in the title and in the first sentence. Maine long distance trails is something that people search for every once in a while. Appalachian Trail is something that people search for really often. And even just the word conservation is a fairly popular search term for these kinds of subjects. So got those keywords in there right away. In the title, the 6 best long distance trails in Maine, you can see right away it's going to be a list style post. So I use that. It's not very sensationalistic though, but it's a list. It's information that hopefully will be interesting or useful for the target audience, the people interested in learning more about the recreational resources in the Maine woods. There are links to other websites you can tell already. The Appalachian Trail is it's bright green, which means it's a click-through to the site of the Appalachian Trail in Maine. It's got links to previous blog posts by Forest for Maine's Future. Up in the top of the page above the title, you can see it's links to both the preceding and next blog posts. So we have one about nature photography. We have one about Maine woods required reading. And so people can easily access more Forest for Maine's Future content right there. Also, the blog, you'll see, is integrated with the website so that people can reach other Forest Remains Future content, like the feature articles by Joe Rankin, like the other forest resources that we offer right there from the blog. So if they find the blog, they found the whole site, which is really important. You can see the start of the actual list format down at the bottom of the page. That number 1, that's going to be the first long distance trail that I talk about. And we've already got a couple big photographs on the page breaking up the text. Now, in this next slide is the body of the blog post. So where you can see it's more of the content that we're hoping that people will find interesting, with more links. Each different long distance trail has a link that drives you to the website of that trail or more information about that trail. What problem does this blog post solve? It solves the problem of where should I go hiking in Maine, or where should I recreate outdoors in Maine. So it's not like a life or death kind of problem, but it is something someone might be searching the internet for. Most posts, and I didn't really mention this earlier, but I try to keep the blog posts for Forest Remains Future about 300 to 400 words, maybe maximum. If you get too much longer than that, you start to reach that attention span issue where it takes people a while to get through the content and they might not stick around. And then here, in this last page, this is the end of the post. So you can see there's another photo in there. There's the list continuing with more links to outside. We have a specific opportunity for readers to engage in the last paragraph there. It's we've certainly missed a few good trails, so let us know your favorite in Maine in the comments below or on our Facebook or Twitter page. So that gives people a lot of chances to add their own input and engage with the content in a different kind of way. And we have links, direct links to Facebook and Twitter, which hopefully will help get a few more Facebook and Twitter likes and follows out of this. There's links to other content that we're trying to promote. So I have an explicit link at the very end of the post to another post about another feature article about one particular long distance trail that Joe Rankin wrote. I think it was last year, maybe a couple of years ago. So people can get more content from Forest Remains Future if they want, really easily. There's the share button. I have a circle around where it says share article, and you can't really see this through here, but if you hover your cursor over that share article, these sub options pop out. That's Facebook, Twitter, and places you can share the article right there. And you can't tell from this, obviously, but with each blog post like this, I post about it several times on the Facebook and the Forest Remains Future Facebook and Twitter pages to try to get maximum reach, drawing people back to this page. And then the last thing, down at the very bottom there, is you can see these different tags. And that's just some other keywords that are common searches, common combinations of words that have to do with the Maine woods that might also help direct search engine traffic to the blog. And they can be pretty general, but it's good to just come up with as many sort of keywords as you can to put in that tagged spot. And so just as the final note here, I wanted to give you an example of what one of those social media ready photos might look like. And this is a photo taken by Joe Rankin a while ago from the Forest Remains Future photo collection, basically. And I'm trying to do an experiment where I take some of these and put quotes about the woods on them, something to make people go, "Ah, isn't that nice?" And and put that on the photograph along with information about Forest Remains Future and how people can find their way back to the Forest Remains Future website, maybe find the Facebook page, find the Twitter page, and hopefully sign up for the email list, which for Forest Remains Future right now really is the final goal of all of this. We want more people to sign up for the email list, more people to be regularly informed of the content that Forest Remains Future is producing. So with this, I posted this on Facebook and Twitter, and it did get shared several. This is one of the most popular ones I've come up with so far. then as it gets shared from page to page by different people, the information about Forest Remains Future, who they are, and how to contact them is consistent over time. So that's about all I've got. Hopefully you've gained a little bit of new information about how to structure a blog post so that it gets maximum visibility. And I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. And also in the future, this is going to be a recorded presentation, so if you're listening to this as a recording, you can always contact me by email if you have questions that you'd like to ask. All right, so we have, Bill is asking, once a blog entry is posted, are you able to edit it or remove it? And the answer is yes. Through the platform, through the software, the blog platform software that you're using to create the blog, you always have the chance to delete a post, to change it after the fact, to change out photos, whatever you want to do. That's your call as the host of the blog. And let's see, so Mark asks, how do you create social media ready photos? That's a good question. So what I do for that is you want to use some kind of photo editing or graphic design software. One of the most widely available methods is actually to use PowerPoint or a PowerPoint-like software, because you can make text blocks. You can put those on top of photographs, all in Twitter. Not Twitter, all in PowerPoint. And then when you've completed, you make it as a single slide. And then once you've completed that, you can save your slide as a JPEG or a PDF or whatever format you want. So that's one of the most user-friendly ways to do it, because a lot of people already know how to use PowerPoint. You could also use a desktop publishing software like InDesign or something like that. Photo editing software like Photoshop is sometimes a way to do that. So there is a little bit of a learning curve to it, though. It takes some messing around at first. All right, so Spencer says, I used a lot of pics from other pages. Was that a specific search engine optimization strategy, or just because you needed some photos? Does cross-posting other people's pics drive more traffic? That's a really good question. A lot of the time, for the Forest Remains Future blog posts, I try to use Forest Remains Future photos first. It's always easier when you're creating web content to use photos that you have total control over, because you know you're not infringing on any kind of copyright or that kind of thing. So using pictures from other pages, when I do it, is mostly just because I needed a picture of something that wasn't available on Forest Remains Future. And I always try to give credit to that site, and just to cover your bases. If someone is very obvious on their site about having copyright over that photo, best practice is always to email them and ask first. If it looks like they're trying to share the photo, sometimes I do go ahead and just take it, but I always give photo credit at the bottom. As far as SEO strategy, SEO, I didn't use that term much in this presentation, but it just means driving traffic to your blog through search engines. Using the photo itself will not change that at all. What will improve your SEO is if you use the photo, you make the photo into a click-through link itself. You know how sometimes on websites you can click the photo and it will bring you to a new site. If you do that, it will have an effect on your SEO. If you just have the photo itself, then it won't actually make much of a difference. And different blog platforms make it easier or harder to make the photo itself into a link. Usually it's pretty easy. And then Tanya asks, are there copyright issues associated with that? And hopefully I addressed some of that in what I just said, but the answer is that you always have to worry about copyright. So if you know where the photo is coming from and you're really worried about it, you can always email people and ask. A lot of the time people are flattered that you want to use their photos. So sometimes it can be a really positive thing to reach out to them. If there is, if it's a situation where people have been trying to share their photo extensively, a lot of the time you can just take it and give credit. We got a few folks typing here. I'm just noticing on the last page here, I didn't give credit to. That's one of our Forest for Maine's Future, either Joe or Pam Wells, and I did not put it in that slide. Photo credit. Oops. Ah, good point, Spencer. Yeah, so are you looking for guest bloggers for Forest for Maine's Future? Could some of our Maine Woods Outreach Network friends provide content if they have a story they want to tell? And the answer is definitely yes. We have been working really hard to come up with new quality content for the blog so far, but we would love to have some partnerships, some topics provided by other people. So even if your organization maybe has a blog already, it has some content that's already been written for that blog, but maybe you think you want a little bit of a wider reach for that content, we would consider maybe posting your post on our blog with credit. It might help drive some new traffic to your blog. If you want to brainstorm about creating new content, if you have a particular topic that you want to get the word out about, we would be really excited to work with you to do a guest blogging kind of arrangement. And maybe it could work both ways. It's possible that we could produce some content that you could use as well. So the best way to do that is to contact me at the email address right there. You could also contact Spencer or Kevin, and we'll get that rolling. It's really something that we'd like to do more of in the coming months. Oh, great, thanks. So Andy says, can you talk more about choosing and getting started with a particular platform? And yes, definitely. One of the biggest things that you want to think about when you're choosing a platform is how that platform will integrate with your existing web presence. So that might involve working with whoever created your website, the website for your organization, and finding out what platform that's on. For instance, WordPress and Squarespace are both platforms that also can be used to just create web pages, and many of the web pages for your organizations might already be based on WordPress or Squarespace or a different format. And so once you find out what that is, then that makes it an easy choice, because you'll just want to stick with that for whatever your blog, so that you can integrate them completely. You know, you'll just probably have a link on your content bar or something like that that says, you know, events, calendar, blog, and that's the best way to have it totally integrated with your site. If you are doing it independently, and there are other organizations, like the Northern Forest Canoe Trail still does this, they have their blog existing totally independently from their website, and then it's more up to you, and you might just want to do some browsing around to some of the different platform options and see which one is most intuitive to you, like which one you think you'll be able to learn fastest, that won't cause you too many headaches. And you can always ask friends that have made blogs for their organizations, what do you use? What do you think is most straightforward? Do you like it? Do you not? Personally, I think the easiest to work with that I've found has been Squarespace, but you also have less customizable options. For instance, that putting keyword tags with photographs, you can't really do that in Squarespace. You can do it in WordPress, but not with Squarespace. So that's kind of a trade-off often. It's easier to use, but there's less features, less flexibility. All right, so I think this one will be our last question. We're running out of time here, but Mark asks, what is the best way to manage multiple writers or bloggers within your organization? Do you want to all use the same blog, or should each write their own titled blog? We have the potential to use multiple authors. So that's a really good question. Often, I think it depends. It would probably depend a little bit on the kind of messaging you're trying to create, whether you want to create more sort of publicity, I guess, for individuals or just for the organization itself. But I think my gut feeling about that is that it's more useful to have everyone use the same blog and have many different authors. Like if you give each individual their own login to the blog, then it will show up when they post that it's that individual that was posting to the blog, as opposed to a different individual that may also be writing for you. So it will be visible to your readers that the content is being created by different people. And usually the way that the blog platforms are set up is that then you'll be, that login name will be clickable, and if you click on it, it will bring people to a page listing all of the blog content that has been written by that individual. So people will be able to find content by each individual, even though they're all posting to the same blog. It seems like that might be a way to keep your outreach more coherent and make it easier to find different content, as opposed to it being spread over multiple pages. But again, it might depend on exactly what you're trying to do. For instance, a media organization that has many different journalists that are trying to create certain reputations and be known as individuals might prefer to each have their own blog. So hopefully that's gets at what you were asking. You're welcome. So I guess that's it for now. And so I just want to say thank you so much for your attention. And Kevin will say a few more words before we take off. But yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for bearing with me and my fast speaking. It's hard when there's not a real audience. So here is Kevin one last time.
Okay, even though I can't see you, I heard a collective sigh. Gee, Kevin's getting back on the microphone, so I do apologize. Just a few closing comments. First of all, thank you everybody for participating. You know, on behalf of the Forests for Maine Futures group, which is made up of the 4 organizations, Tom Doak, Sherry Huber, CJ, Spencer, myself, thank you for participating. We will be doing a couple of things after this webinar. We'll be sending out an email to everybody asking for any kind of suggestions you have for future social media or other type of webinars or workshops. We are going to archive this webinar. We will put a link to it on the Forests for Maine Futures website, and I would say just give us a few days, maybe a week, to get the link on there. So if there's something that you would like to hear again or hear many times or share with friends, feel free. That link will be there within a week. Feel free to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, go to our website to sign up for the Forests for Maine Futures email listserv, blogs, contact any one of us if you'd like to be a guest blogger. And if you want to participate, as Spencer mentioned, with ongoing discussion and or questions for Aaron or anybody in the group, but Aaron on blogging, please join us on LinkedIn. If you're not part of LinkedIn, it is a good platform for discussion, and we would like to use that more often. So with that, I will close the webinar. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Spencer. And thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a good day.